So one of the things that I think you're addressing there that is incredibly crucial is the idea that for social media firms and these big companies like Google, like Facebook, like Twitter, our well-being and us having high quality journalism to consume is so far down their list of priorities, it's unfathomable. They have zero, like, and I really mean zero incentive to make the platform conducive to healthy debate, great journalism, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Like, that's not to say there aren't things that people shouldn't be allowed to say. I mean, if you're just sending death threats to people, like, you should probably be kicked off, like the way you'd be thrown out of a bar or any normal thing. But the priorities of Google and Facebook and whatnot are not our well-being and us making sure that we're, well-informed, reasonable citizens capable of discussing topics in depth, or that's not their priority at all. It's like it's not even in their like ballpark of possibilities of things.
I think let's be straight about this. It's opposite to their interests. Their interests as profit-making organizations is purely to actually reduce us to our most base instincts, to turn us into passive or active consumers. And to do so, they have to find the most addictive ways to deflect us from actually being interested in anything that actually materially affects us. Because, of course, if we got interested in the things that materially affected us and we were to try to change them, for instance, for the better of us, that would include changing them. Their interests are very much tied in. They talk about themselves as disruptors, as technologies disruptors. There's nothing new under the sun about what's happening here. Capitalism always tends towards a monopoly. And what we've seen in the past, in the early age of the internet here, is the opening of a new market and the monopolization of that market. And now those big players have controllers and control information and the flow of information. They're not going to give that up. They don't want to give that up. And to keep control of that, they have to have a passive population. So their business model is first off, it's important for them to just turn us into soporific, drugged out consumers, right? But it's also in their political and organizational interest to make sure that we don't, for instance, organize, tech workers unionizing. That's, generally you don't want to spread the idea that unionization is good because, that might mean your own workers unionize. And, some of these tech platforms are not, Google might be totally web-based, but, it relies on technology that's produced through the blood of children who are mining coltan in the Congo, and then being shipped to China where people are throwing themselves off buildings, right? You don't want people to be advocating for global human rights or for workers' rights around the world. It's antithetical to your specific organization and to capitalism in general, and your capitalist organization that benefits from this. So everything about your organization, everything about what you do is in terms of both profit making and protecting your own interests, is set up to make sure that us everyday citizens, we're not viewed as citizens. We are viewed as consumers and customers, and banks of data to be mined and sold. And we are. Our time on the internet is the modern oil, as someone said it. We are being mined constantly. Digital data is oil, and they want to extract that from us and commodify it and sell it on and make cash from it. That's their only interest, and that's completely opposite to a well-functioning democratic society where citizens are informed.
Yeah, and I also want to add there to that these people don't just not care about those priorities, that they actively act at virtue signaling about the causes that people genuinely support in order to I honestly believe hide the true intentions of what they're attempting to do in harvesting data, dividing the population, ensuring that good journalism is not getting out there, and they hide their true intentions by, you know, painting rainbows on the sides of everything, which is like both damaging to the cause that you know the LGBT people are pursuing, and just completely disingenuous at the same time.
Yeah, look, and you know, there's the queer example is a good example. The LGBTQ thing it is a good example because, you know, you've seen it in pride parades across the UK in the past couple of years. There's been a pushback against the police being involved in pride, right? And corporations like Barclays, because, you know, they're what's called pinkwashing their reputations when, you know, these are the very organizations that benefited from oppressing them or were actively oppressed them, you know, oppress that community. And Google's no different. You know, when Google supports tacitly or actively regimes that are actively homophobic, that you know, ban the rights of people to practice, to be who they are, to be the human being that they are in places like, let's not forget, like, say, Saudi Arabia is a classic example, but there's plenty of other regimes that Google and others are working with. Then, you know, they're actively benefiting from the very oppression that they pretend to care about. And as you say, it's virtue signaling. For me, it's liberalism in its purest form, which is to say what we'd like is to suggest that the world would be better if certain people had a seat at the table, but nothing should fundamentally change. So we should recognize as different communities and get them involved, but get them involved in maintaining everything as it is. So like, so everyone, you know, so as I say, children can mine coltan, you know, kids can pick cotton and be sold into slavery still to this day. You know, oil can be mined from war zones and genocides. You know, workers can be worked to death. That's all fine. But, you know, we've got a queer CEO.
We've got a diversity officer, so it's all okay.
It's fine. We've gone through the stuff that makes our customers happy, because we know that our customers are human beings, and human beings are, as much as it's maligned and as much as we're afraid of the rise of the far right and so forth like that, generally quite empathetic. Unless you're a sociopath or psychopath, we literally have a psychological class for people who do not feel empathy, and it ranks around about 1% of all humans at the top end don't feel empathy. We do feel empathy. We do want the world to be better for ourselves and for others, and we have a machinery of information that tries to suppress those human instincts at all points, because, you know, if we actually acted upon them and actually saw a world like that, it wouldn't be maintained. So, you know, I find, you know, a lot of that stuff, as you say, virtue signaling is the term that's often used, pretty disgusting, quite frankly. You know, and if you want to do something for people, let's really talk about it. Let's do something, you know.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to add there is that I think what you're describing is more neoliberalism than classical liberalism. Like, I spent a fair amount of time while I was writing my book, like trying to parse out like what exactly I mean by neoliberalism, because I was it kept coming up in a lot of the stuff I was writing and reading about, and I was like, right, okay, I really need to get my head around it. So that kind of like tokenism, superficial appeal to, you know, the right thing, that kind of we get from these big corporations, and often, quite honestly, from both politicians and the media as well, who literally don't care about the things that they're pushing or pretending to, is just it's like the definition for me of one of the tenets of neoliberalism. Whereas, yeah, classical liberalism tends, in my mind, to at least mean people who, you know, might have some, you know, crazy ideas, but will listen to everyone. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or sign up to our mailing list. Thanks a lot to our sponsor, ExpressVPN, the #1 most trusted VPN. Get lightning fast connectivity with servers in 160 locations across 94 countries. Keep your browsing privacy safe with ExpressVPN, and get a 35% discount on 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. Don't forget, my book is now out and available to order on Amazon and on bookshop.org. Does Brexit the establishment civil war? And most importantly, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.